From the outside, my life with Sophia seemed picture perfect. A marriage that could have been the blueprint for happiness, built on love, success, and family. I was the steady, level-headed businessman, someone who placed loyalty and trust above everything. Sophia, on the other hand, thrived in high society, effortlessly commanding attention with her charm and elegance. Together, we were the kind of couple people admired. With our kids, Chloe and Caleb, off on a holiday with my parents, we found ourselves with an unusual bit of peace and quiet. It felt like the perfect opportunity to reconnect, or so I believed. When Sophia brought up the idea of a vacation, I'll admit I was caught off guard. "It'll be good for us," she said, flashing that irresistible smile she always knew how to use to her advantage. "Just the two of us, a chance to relax, unwind, and bring back some of that spark." Her words sounded sincere, but I couldn't help but notice a subtle impatience in her tone, as though she expected me to agree without hesitation. And, of course, I did. Trusting Sophia had always been second nature to me, and besides, she had a point. We were overdue for a break. She took the reins immediately, insisting she'd plan everything herself. "I'll handle it," she said with a graceful wave of her manicured hand. That was just Sophia, confident and in control. Honestly, I didn't mind. My days were packed enough with business demands, so letting her manage this felt like a relief. In the weeks leading up to the trip, Sophia's excitement filled the house. She threw herself into the planning, researching resorts, booking spa packages, and shopping for vacation clothes. I stayed quiet, going along with her enthusiasm, even convincing myself that this trip was her way of showing how much she cared about us. But as the departure date got closer, an unease started to creep in. It wasn't anything I could put my finger on, just a faint, lingering sense that something wasn't quite right. Her excitement felt a little too rehearsed, and her determination to control every detail seemed unusually intense. Still, I pushed those doubts aside. Questioning Sophia felt almost like a betrayal, and that wasn't the kind of husband I wanted to be. When the day of the trip finally came, I watched her pack with a precision that hinted at experience. "You sure you've got everything?" I teased, gesturing at the overflowing suitcase. "Feels like you're packing for a month." She laughed it off, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You know me, always prepared," she replied with an easy smile. As we headed to the airport, I decided to let my guard down. Maybe this was exactly what we needed, a chance to focus on each other without the noise of daily life. I glanced at Sophia, looking radiant and self-assured, and reminded myself why I had fallen for her in the first place. The flight was smooth, with Sophia spending most of it scrolling through her phone, occasionally offering me a distracted smile. I didn't mind the quiet. I let myself imagine the calm beaches and peaceful days ahead, convincing myself that everything was just as perfect as it appeared. When we arrived at the resort, Sophia lit up, her excitement spilling over. "Isn't this place stunning?" she gushed, gesturing at the grand entrance and the ocean sparkling in the distance. I nodded, genuinely impressed by the resort. It was extravagant, far more luxurious than anything I'd pick for myself, but I didn't mind indulging if it made Sophia happy. As we checked in, she leaned in close, her voice dropping into a soft, conspiratorial tone. "This is going to be amazing, Caleb. Just you wait." Her reassurance felt comforting, and for a moment, my earlier unease melted away. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to feel optimistic. Whatever issues lingered between us, this trip seemed like a step in the right direction. But as it turned out, that perfect beginning was nothing more than a polished facade, one that was about to crumble in ways I never could have predicted. The resort itself was breathtaking, the kind of place you'd see on the cover of luxury travel magazines. The lobby was massive, with polished marble floors that gleamed under the sunlight streaming through towering glass windows. The view of the turquoise ocean stretched endlessly, framed perfectly by the architecture. Sipping a welcome drink, I let myself soak it all in. Maybe Sophia had been right. This could be the fresh start we needed. Then, out of nowhere, Sophia's voice cut through my thoughts. "Caleb, look who's here!" she exclaimed, waving excitedly. I turned to see three women, Isabella, Zoe, and Melissa, striding toward us like they owned the place. Their designer sunglasses were perched on top of perfectly styled hair, and their presence radiated the kind of energy that demanded attention. High-pitched laughter and animated greetings echoed around them, a tidal wave of noise and motion. I blinked, thrown off. This was supposed to be a trip for just the two of us. Sophia hadn't mentioned anyone else joining. Isabella was the first to reach us, pulling Sophia into an enthusiastic hug. "Liv, you look incredible! I can't believe we're finally doing this. This place is amazing!" Melissa chimed in, her sharp eyes scanning the opulent surroundings. "Leave it to Sophia to pick the best of the best." I stood there awkwardly, feeling like a stranger intruding on some prearranged reunion. Sophia turned to me with a bright smile, slipping her arm through mine. "Caleb, you remember Isabella, Zoe, and Melissa, don't you?" she asked as if we were all old friends. I nodded politely, though I barely recognized them from a few social events Sophia had dragged me to in the past. "Isn't this wonderful?" Sophia continued, her excitement unshakable. "We can all relax together. It'll be so much fun." Fun. Sure, that was one way to describe it. The group migrated toward a plush seating area in the lobby, where drinks and appetizers were already waiting. I trailed behind, still processing the sudden realization that this wasn't the intimate getaway I'd envisioned. As the women settled in, their laughter filled the space, echoing off the grand walls. Sophia was in her element, the undeniable center of attention, effortlessly guiding the conversation. I tried to join in here and there, but every attempt to speak was met with polite indifference, or quickly redirected back to Sophia. Then came the subtle digs. "Caleb, you're so lucky Sophia handles everything," Zoe said with a sly smile, her voice dripping with faux admiration. "I don't know how you'd manage without her." Isabella chimed in, swirling her drink theatrically. "Let's be honest, Sophia's the real powerhouse here. Running the household, keeping up with us, and still finding time for you? That's impressive." The women laughed, their words hitting me like a series of tiny jabs. I forced a smile, doing my best to mask the sting. What hurt more was Sophia's reaction, or lack thereof. She didn't defend me. If anything, she leaned into their narrative, casually boasting about her connections and accomplishments like I was little more than a footnote in her story. "Well, someone has to keep things running," Sophia said with a knowing smile, raising her glass. "Caleb's got his business." The words hung in the air, and I couldn't help but feel like an accessory to her performance. "But I'm the glue that holds everything together," Sophia declared with a confident smile, raising her glass. The women cheered, clinking their glasses in a mock toast. Meanwhile, I sipped my drink silently, wondering how I had ended up here, on the fringes of a conversation that felt more like a performance than genuine interaction. As the evening dragged on, the topics shifted to extravagant vacations, designer labels, and social events that I had zero interest in. Every so often, Sophia would glance my way, her smile a curious mix of amusement, and something else I couldn't quite place. Satisfaction, perhaps? At one point, Melissa leaned in, her voice just loud enough to ensure I'd hear. "You're so lucky, Liv. Most guys wouldn't fund a trip like this." Fund. The word hit me hard, my grip tightening on my glass. Of course, I had agreed to pay for the trip, but hearing it framed so bluntly made it feel transactional, not thoughtful. Sophia laughed lightly, waving off the comment as if it were nothing. "Well, Caleb understands the importance of treating me right. Don't you, darling?" she said, turning to me with a casual air. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Of course." But inside, something shifted. This wasn't a romantic getaway, this was Sophia's stage. I wasn't her partner here, I was just a backdrop to her show. When the gathering finally wound down, I felt like more of an outsider than ever. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed, chatting animatedly with Isabella as we made our way to the front desk to check in. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett." The receptionist greeted us with a warm smile. "Your party's rooms are ready." Party. The word landed like a slap. As the receptionist handed over the keys, something caught my eye. All the rooms were listed under my credit card. Every single one. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "There seems to be a mistake. I only authorized one room." The receptionist hesitated for a moment, glancing at Sophia. Before I could press further, she stepped in smoothly. "Oh, it's fine, Caleb. I arranged everything. Trust me, it's easier this way," she said, her tone as sweet as honey. I turned to Sophia, waiting for an explanation that made sense. Instead, she handed me a single key. "Here's your room," she said nonchalantly. "I'll be staying with Isabella tonight. We just have so much to catch up on." Before I could respond, Zoe chimed in with a chuckle. "She needs her space, Caleb. Don't take it personally." The group burst into laughter, and I felt my face heat. Sophia handed the remaining keys to her friends, who accepted them without hesitation. "We only reserve rooms for the elites," Melissa joked, flashing me a grin. That's when it all clicked. This wasn't a vacation for us, it was Sophia's carefully orchestrated social retreat, and I was footing the entire bill. I looked at her, my expression unreadable. "Enjoy your evening," I said evenly, slipping the key into my pocket. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the lobby. Outside, the cool evening air hit me like a shock, but it wasn't enough to quiet the sting of betrayal. The resort glowed under the warm hues of the setting sun, but the beauty felt hollow now, tainted by the weight of what had just happened. I stood there for a moment, inhaling deeply in an attempt to calm the storm churning inside me. I wasn't the kind to make a scene, I never had been. But this crossed a line I hadn't thought even Sophia would dare to approach. After a moment, I turned and walked back inside, my resolve hardening. I needed clarity. Maybe there had been a misunderstanding, or maybe I just needed confirmation of what I was starting to suspect. At the front desk, the receptionist offered me a polite smile. "Mr. Bennett, is there something I can assist you with?" "Yes," I said, keeping my tone steady. "I noticed all the rooms are under my credit card. Could you confirm the total booking details for me?" She hesitated for the briefest of moments before typing on her keyboard. "Of course, sir. There are 4 rooms reserved under your name, all charged to the card on file." "Is there an issue?" "For rooms. All charged to me." My jaw tightened as I absorbed the confirmation. I clenched my jaw, nodding slowly. "No issue. Thank you for confirming," I said, my voice steady. Stepping away from the desk, my thoughts raced. Sophia hadn't just invited her friends along on this trip, she had funded their entire stay using my money. And the fact that she hadn't even bothered to mention it? That spoke volumes. As I made my way to my assigned room, I tried to calm the storm brewing inside me. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe Sophia planned to tell me but was waiting for the right moment. I wanted to believe that, even though deep down, I already knew the truth. When I opened the door to my room, I was greeted by a standard suite, comfortable but far less luxurious than the rooms I'd glimpsed earlier during check-in. Another detail that didn't escape me. Dropping my bag onto the bed, I sat down and rubbed my temples. I needed to talk to Sophia, to hear her explanation, even though I had a sinking feeling I already knew how that conversation would go. Gathering my resolve, I left the room and headed to the suite where Sophia was staying with Isabella. The door was slightly ajar, and their voices spilled into the hallway. "Caleb's probably sulking right now." Sophia's voice floated out, light and dismissive. Isabella laughed. "You don't have to explain yourself to him. Heck, he's lucky to even be here. Honestly, Liv, you're too nice sometimes." "Oh, please," Sophia replied, her tone dripping with amusement. "Caleb's harmless. He knows better than to make a fuss. Besides, this is my trip. He should just be grateful I let him tag along." The laughter that followed hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood frozen in the hallway, anger and humiliation warring within me. Grateful? Let me tag along? Was this how she truly saw me? Taking a deep breath, I stepped back and returned to my room. Confronting her in front of her little audience would only give her and her friends more fuel to mock me. No, I needed to think this through carefully. Later that evening, Sophia returned briefly to our room, her expression casual, as if nothing had happened. "Caleb," she said breezily, "I'll be staying with Isabella tonight. You don't mind, do you?" I stared at her, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Mind? Not at all. Enjoy your evening." She gave me a fleeting smile, mistaking my composure for acceptance, and left without another word. As the door clicked shut behind her, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty space where she had stood. How did we get here? I thought. How had the woman I once loved and trusted turned into someone who could treat me with such disdain? The answer didn't come, but my decision did. The next morning, I packed my bags and checked out of the resort without a word to Sophia or her friends. As I handed the receptionist my room key, she looked up, startled. Leaving so soon, Mr. Bennett? Yes, I replied evenly. Please ensure all remaining charges to my card are cancelled immediately. The receptionist hesitated but nodded, sensing the finality in my tone. Of course, sir. As I walked out of the resort, I didn't feel regret, I felt relief. Sophia had made it abundantly clear where I stood in her life, and I wasn't going to stay where I wasn't valued. Once I reached the parking area, I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened my banking app, and began canceling every card connected to Sophia's spending. It was time to take back control of my finances, of my life, and of my self-respect. I sat in the quiet of my office, the hum of the ceiling fan filling the room. It was the kind of silence that both comforted and unsettled, a silence that forced me to confront the wreckage Sophia had left behind. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, letting out a long breath. The house felt different now. For years, it had been a sanctuary, a place where love and family thrived, or so I thought. Now, it felt like a reminder of everything I had overlooked, of how blind I'd been to Sophia's true nature. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, staring out the window at the backyard where Chloe and Caleb used to play. Their laughter still echoed in my mind, a bittersweet reminder of what mattered most. Whatever storms Sophia and I had to face now, I was determined to protect my kids from it. The thought of them grounded me. They were the reason I couldn't afford to let anger consume me. This wasn't just about me, it was about showing them what strength and self-respect looked like, even in the face of betrayal. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I had mapped out my next steps. It wasn't just about divorce papers or frozen accounts, it was about rebuilding. Sophia had taken enough from me, but she wouldn't take my peace, my dignity, or my future. That evening, as I sat alone in the living room, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, clarity. Sophia might not have noticed I was gone yet, or perhaps she had and was spinning her own narrative to her friends. Either way, it didn't matter. I was done waiting for her to acknowledge the damage she'd caused. Tomorrow, everything would change. The divorce papers would be drafted, my financials secured, and my boundaries reinforced. For the first time in years, I wasn't acting out of trust or obligation, I was acting out of self-respect. As I climbed into bed that night, I allowed myself a small smile. It wasn't joy, but it was something close to relief. Sophia might have thought she held all the cards, but she was about to learn otherwise. The days of taking me for granted were over. "Ma'am, the transaction didn't go through. Perhaps you'd like to try another card?" he suggested, his tone polite but wary. Sophia's cheeks flushed, though she masked it with a tight-lipped smile. "Of course," she said, fishing through her designer purse for another card, likely one she assumed I hadn't touched. The result was the same. Declined. Isabella and Melissa exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence visibly shaken. "What's going on, Liv?" Melissa asked, her voice tinged with concern but edged with judgment. Sophia began, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a choke. "There must be a mistake. Caleb probably forgot to update the accounts. You know how men are with these things." But no one was buying it, least of all the waiter, who looked less amused with every passing second. "Perhaps you can settle this at the front desk," he suggested, his professionalism barely concealing the awkwardness of the moment. The facade Sophia had so carefully crafted began to crumble as she was escorted out of the dining hall, her friends trailing behind her like a Greek chorus of doubt and disbelief. By the time she reached the front desk, the reality of the situation hit her like a wave. "There must be some mistake," she insisted, her voice sharp now, bordering on panic. "Run the charges again. My husband will take care of it." The receptionist, calm and composed, replied, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your husband checked out yesterday. He left instructions to cancel any further charges to his account." Sophia froze, the weight of the words sinking in. Isabella stepped closer, lowering her voice but not enough to hide the edge. Wait, Liv, you mean he left? Without telling you? I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, Sophia said, her voice trembling but trying to maintain its usual confidence. Caleb wouldn't just leave. He's probably back home handling something important. Zoe raised an eyebrow. You think he cancelled the cards too, for something important? Sophia's carefully curated world had officially imploded, and the cracks were visible to everyone around her. She mumbled an excuse to the receptionist and walked away, her phone clutched tightly in her hand as she started dialing me again. Underscore 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 underscore. Back at home, I finally decided to pick up her call after letting it ring 3 times. I wanted her to know that she no longer had the power to dictate the narrative. Caleb! Sophia's voice came through the line, thick with frustration and feigned sweetness. There seems to be an issue with the accounts. Did you forget to update the cards before leaving? I let the silence stretch for a moment before responding, my tone calm but cold. No, Sophia, I didn't forget. I cancelled them. The pause on her end was palpable. You what? Why would you do that? Because, Sophia, I said, leaning back into my chair. This was supposed to be a couple's getaway, not a free-for-all for you and your friends, funded entirely by me. I'm done being taken advantage of. Her voice shifted, the edge of panic creeping in. Caleb, you're overreacting. We can talk about this when I get home. No, Sophia. I interrupted, my voice firm. We're not talking about this later. This isn't something we can fix with a conversation or another apology. I've already started the process of moving forward, without you. Moving forward? She echoed, her voice shaking. Divorce, I said simply. The papers will be ready soon. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. The line went quiet, the weight of my words sinking in. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. You can't be serious, Caleb. After everything I've done for us? I almost laughed at the irony. Everything you've done? Sophia, you've spent years disrespecting me, using me, and treating me like I'm nothing more than a wallet. This trip was the final straw. I deserve better than this. Her protests blurred into the background as I calmly ended the call, my decision resolute. Sophia had underestimated me for the last time. As I put my phone down, I felt an unexpected lightness, a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. Sophia could stay in the luxury resort she valued so much, without me. From here on out, my life would be mine again. Sophia's face flushed a deep red as she stammered, her confident demeanor unraveling before their eyes. Of course not, she snapped, her voice higher than usual. Caleb and I share everything. He's just being difficult right now, that's all. Isabella raised an eyebrow, her patience clearly wearing thin. Difficult? Liv, this is more than difficult. This is embarrassing. We trusted you to handle this. Zoe wasn't as tactful. So, he's been footing the bill for everything? And you've been acting like it's all your money? Wow, Liv. Just wow. Sophia's hands clenched into fists at her sides. You don't understand. She hissed, her voice low as resort staff glanced their way. Caleb and I have an arrangement. He always takes care of things. Well, it looks like that arrangement has expired. Isabella muttered, rolling her eyes. What now, Liv? Are you going to call him back and beg? Sophia bristled at the suggestion, but the truth was unavoidable. Her carefully constructed image was crumbling faster than she could rebuild it, and her friends, her allies, were turning on her. Underscore 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 underscore. Meanwhile, back at home, I poured myself a cup of coffee, watching as more notifications lit up my phone. Each failed transaction felt like a small victory, a step toward reclaiming my dignity. By the time the next call came, I debated answering. But curiosity got the better of me. Caleb. Sophia's voice came through, strained and desperate. Can we talk? I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting her words hang in the air before responding. About what, Sophia? About this mess, she snapped, before quickly softening her tone. Look, I get it. You're upset, and maybe I should have told you about bringing Isabella and Zoe, but you didn't have to do this. You've made your point. I chuckled, the sound dry and unamused. Oh, I'm not trying to make a point, Sophia. I'm making a decision. You've taken advantage of me for far too long. This isn't about being upset, it's about being done. Caleb, she said, her voice trembling now, you're blowing this out of proportion. We've had our issues, sure, but we can work through this. Don't throw everything away over one mistake. One mistake? I repeated, my voice icy. This isn't one mistake, Sophia. This is a pattern. A pattern of disrespect, entitlement, and manipulation. I've ignored it for years, but not anymore. She tried to interrupt, but I pressed on. You mocked me in front of your friends. You spent my money without a second thought. And now, when the consequences hit, you expect me to swoop in and save you? No, Sophia. This is the end of the road. Her silence was deafening. For once, she had no clever retort, no excuse to offer. Goodbye, Sophia, I said firmly, hanging up before she could respond. Underscore 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 underscore. Back at the resort, Sophia sat frozen, her phone still pressed to her ear as the line went dead. Isabella and Zoe were staring at her now, their expressions a mix of pity and disdain. So, Isabella said after a long silence, I guess Caleb's not coming to save the day. Zoe let out a humorless laugh. Looks like you're on your own, Liv. Maybe it's time to figure out how to pay for your own mess. As Sophia buried her face in her hands, the realization of everything she'd lost began to sink in. She wasn't just losing the lifestyle she'd grown so accustomed to, she was losing the man who had once been her greatest supporter, her safety net, and her partner. And this time, there was no one left to blame but herself. Not the point? Isabella shot back, her voice rising in frustration. Are you kidding me, Sophia? You dragged us into this mess, promised us some grand luxury vacation, and now we're on the verge of being thrown out. How is that not the point? Zoe crossed her arms, her expression sharp and unforgiving. You've been playing pretend, Liv. Acting like you're this independent woman when all you've done is live off Caleb's generosity. And now that he's done with you, we're the ones stuck dealing with the fallout. Sophia opened her mouth to argue but found no words. The truth was staring her in the face, and even she couldn't spin it to her advantage this time. The resort manager cleared his throat, cutting through the tension. Ma'am, if the balance isn't settled within the hour, we'll have no choice but to involve law enforcement. I suggest you make some calls. Isabella and Zoe stepped back, their body language screaming that they wanted no part of Sophia's crumbling world. We're done, Sophia, Isabella said flatly. Figure this out yourself. Without another word, the two turned and walked away, leaving Sophia standing alone in the middle of the lobby. Underscore 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 underscore. Back at home, I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window at the quiet street. For years I had played the role Sophia wanted me to, the provider, the problem solver, the ever-reliable husband. But now, as I sat there with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in ages, I realized just how much of myself I had sacrificed in the process. The phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail notification. Curious, I played it, and Sophia's voice came through, frantic and angry. "Caleb, you can't do this to me. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I'm stranded here because of you. Fix this, now. Call me back." I shook my head, deleting the message without hesitation. Sophia's sense of entitlement was still as strong as ever, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. The following morning, Rebecca, my lawyer, called to check in. "Good news, Caleb," she said. "The divorce petition was delivered without issue, and the process is moving along smoothly. Have you given any more thought to the asset division?" "Yes," I replied firmly. "I want to ensure everything is handled fairly, but Sophia isn't walking away with a free ride. The house, the accounts, and anything tied to my business, those stay with me. She can keep whatever she brought into the marriage, but that's it." Rebecca's tone was approving. "Understood. I'll make sure the paperwork reflects that." As I hung up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was in control of my life again. Underscore 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 underscore. At the resort, Sophia was spiraling. The resort staff had grown less patient, and the threat of police involvement loomed closer. Her phone calls to friends back home yielded little sympathy. Most either dodged her calls or politely declined to help. By the end of the day, Sophia found herself packing her bags under the watchful eyes of resort security. The once pristine image she had carefully curated was shattered, and there was no one left to blame. As she loaded her luggage into a taxi, she clutched the divorce papers tightly, her mind racing. She had always assumed Caleb would cave, that he'd forgive her just as he always had. But this time was different. This time, he had walked away, and he wasn't coming back. And for the first time, Sophia had to face the reality she had been avoiding for years. She was on her own. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and looked at them both. "I know this is confusing and probably scary," I said gently. "But I need you to know that this isn't your fault. None of this is because of anything you did. Your mom and I, we just couldn't make it work anymore. But we both love you so much, and that will never change." Caleb's brow furrowed as he tried to process my words. "Does this mean we won't see Mom anymore?" "You'll still see her," I assured him. "We're going to figure out a schedule so you can spend time with both of us. I promise we'll do everything we can to make this as easy for you as possible." Chloe hugged her knees to her chest, her voice barely above a whisper. "But why can't you just fix it? Like, just try harder?" Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. "I wish it were that simple, sweetheart," I said finally, my voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, things just don't work out the way you want them to. But what matters is that we're still a family. We'll get through this together." There was a long silence, broken only by the sound of Chloe's quiet sniffles. I reached out, pulling both of them into a hug. "I know it's hard right now," I said. "But I'm here for you. Always. If you ever have questions or just want to talk, you can come to me, okay?" They nodded, and for a moment, the weight of everything seemed to lift as I held them close. This was just the beginning of a long journey, but at least we were taking the first step together. Underscore 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 underscore. Over the next few weeks, life slowly began to take on a new rhythm. The house felt different without Sophia, quieter but also lighter. I poured myself into rebuilding not just my life, but a sense of stability for Chloe and Caleb. We established routines, family dinners, movie nights, Weekend trips to the park. Small things, but they mattered. Sophia's absence was noticeable, of course. The kids miss her, and I didn't discourage their feelings. They called her regularly and spent weekends at her brother's house, where she was staying temporarily. I made a point not to speak ill of her in front of them, even when the bitterness threatened to bubble over. They didn't need to bear the weight of our issues. One evening, after tucking them into bed, I sat alone in the living room, a glass of whiskey in hand. The quiet was both comforting and unnerving. For years I had been so consumed by the chaos of my marriage that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be. I thought about the man I used to be, the man who had dreams, who laughed easily, who felt at peace in his own skin. Somewhere along the way, I had lost him. But now, sitting in that quiet house, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could find him again. Underscore 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 underscore. Meanwhile, Sophia was navigating her own version of rock bottom. Her brother had made it clear that his hospitality had limits, and her social circle had all but evaporated. The woman who once commanded attention and admiration was now left to face the consequences of her actions alone. One afternoon she called. It was the first time we'd spoken since she left the resort. "Caleb," she began, her voice hesitant. "I want to talk. About us. About everything." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "Sophia, there is no us anymore. That chapter is closed. I know I've made mistakes," she said quickly. "But we've been together for so long. Doesn't that count for something?" "It did," I replied evenly. "But what matters now is moving forward. For me, for the kids, and for you. I hope you take this time to figure things out, Sophia. I really do." Her silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, she muttered, "I never thought it would end like this." "Neither did I admitted. "But here we are." When the call ended, I felt a strange sense of closure. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. My focus was on the future, the life I was rebuilding, the father I was becoming, and the man I was rediscovering. The days after the divorce were a blur of adjustments, but the weight that had once pressed down on me began to lift. I had time to breathe again, real time, not just moments stolen between Sophia's demands or her emotional outbursts. I started focusing on what I needed, not just what everyone else needed. It felt strange at first, like I was betraying the version of myself that had been so consumed by the marriage, but slowly it started to feel like freedom. With the kids, I kept everything steady. The routine became the anchor. It was never perfect, but it was ours, and it was stable. Caleb's small observation about my happiness hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in a long time, I realized that I was genuinely content. The tension in the house was gone, and in its place was space for laughter, for quiet moments, and for the occasional chaos of everyday life that didn't feel oppressive. I spent more time doing things I had once enjoyed, catching up with old friends, picking up hobbies I'd let slip, even taking long walks just to clear my mind. The house didn't feel empty, it felt like it was mine again. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. My time wasn't tied up in managing someone else's whims, and I started rediscovering parts of myself that had been buried for years. Work, too, became a refuge. I threw myself into new projects, finding satisfaction in creating things that had my name on them, not just things that were part of a life I was no longer part of. The projects were small at first, just things that allowed me to reclaim some sense of ownership over my time. But over time, they grew, and with them, my sense of self-worth. I wasn't just a husband or a provider. I was Caleb again, standing on my own 2 feet. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed to sink deeper into her isolation. I heard bits and pieces, through mutual acquaintances and the occasional conversation with her brother. She had become a shadow of the woman she once was, no longer the center of attention, no longer in control of her world. She had to face the consequences of her actions, and while a part of me still felt sorry for her, that was no longer my burden to carry. I'd done everything I could to keep things civil, but Sophia's behavior left little room for reconciliation. She had her own path to walk now, and I had mine. I knew she'd have to find her way, whatever that looked like, but it no longer mattered to me. My focus was on my children, on healing, and on creating a life where I could be proud of who I was, not just who I had been for someone else. When the divorce was final, it felt like an exhale, a release. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't a moment to celebrate. It was simply the end of one chapter, and the beginning of another. I wasn't rushing into anything new, but I wasn't afraid of what came next either. For the first time in years, I felt like the weight of the world wasn't on my shoulders. And I had hope again, hope for a future that was mine to shape. A future with my kids, with peace, and with the chance to build something better. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was all I needed. The fallout was behind us, replaced by the faint glimmer of a fresh start. When I made the decision to cut Sophia off completely, I knew it would force her to confront the mess she'd created. What I didn't anticipate was just how fast her life would spiral out of control. This woman, once basking in the glow of high society and constantly surrounded by yes-men, suddenly found herself grappling with the harshness of life without me as her safety net. It started with quiet murmurs among her so-called friends. Isabella and Zoe, the same women who had left her stranded at the resort, wasted no time spinning their version of events to their circle. Stories about Sophia's unpaid bills and the humiliation of being served divorce papers mid-luxury vacation spread like wildfire. Her carefully crafted image of a confident, independent woman crumbled overnight. Sophia had always been the one to command attention, the life of every party, the center of every room. Now, she was a topic of ridicule. Invitations stopped coming, and those who once hung on her every word suddenly avoided her calls. The socialite who used to hold court was now a pariah. Her brother Jason, begrudgingly, took her in after she left the resort. Those first few weeks, he called me often, venting his frustrations. "Caleb, she's impossible," he sighed one evening, his voice weighed down with exhaustion. "She refuses to take responsibility for anything. She blames you for the divorce, the money, even her friends turning on her." I leaned back in my chair, trying to stay composed. "She's got to face reality, Jason. She made this mess, and all I can do now is focus on the kids and myself." Jason groaned in response. "I know. I just wish she'd realize how good she had it. You gave her everything, Caleb, and this is how she treats you? She'll either figure it out or she won't," I said, my voice steady. "Either way, it's not my problem anymore." Despite his frustrations, Jason tried to help her. He urged her to get a job, but Sophia dismissed the idea outright. The same woman who used to belittle me for working long hours now couldn't fathom the thought of doing it herself. "I can't work a regular job, Jason," she snapped during one of their heated arguments, which he later relayed to me. "Do you have any idea how humiliating that would be? People would talk." "They're already talking, Sophia," Jason shot back, his patience wearing thin. Meanwhile, my life without Sophia's constant demands was finally gaining momentum. I threw myself into my business, watching it thrive as I channeled my energy into exciting new projects. But more importantly, I focused on reconnecting with Chloe and Caleb. Weekends became our sacred time, filled with hiking, cooking, and even tackling DIY projects around the house. One evening, as we sat together at the dinner table, Chloe glanced up at me, her expression thoughtful. "Dad," she asked quietly, "do you miss Mom?" The question caught me off guard, but I answered Chloe honestly. "I miss the good times," I admitted, "but I don't miss how things were at the end. Sometimes, letting go is the best thing you can do, for yourself and the people you love." She nodded slowly, her young mind turning over my words. "I think I get it. You seem happier now." "I am," I said with a smile, glancing at her and Caleb. "And that's because I have you too. You're the most important part of my life." Sophia, on the other hand, was struggling to find her footing. Her attempts to cling to the life she once knew fell flat, and her isolation deepened. She reached out to a few old acquaintances, hoping to rebuild connections, but all she got were polite excuses and vague promises to catch up someday. Then, one day, she called me. I hesitated before answering, debating whether it was worth hearing her out. Finally, I picked up. "Caleb," she started, her tone softer than I'd heard in years. I just wanted to talk." "What do you need, Sophia?" I asked, keeping my voice calm and measured. There was a pause on the other end before she said, "I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I didn't realize how much I depended on you until you were gone. I know I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to tell you." Her words caught me off guard, but I didn't let my guard down. "I appreciate the apology," I replied cautiously. "But saying you're sorry doesn't erase the past. I've moved on, Sophia, and I think it's time you did too." She sniffled quietly, and for a brief moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But I reminded myself of all the times I'd tried to salvage things, only to be met with coldness and blame. "Take care of yourself, Sophia," I said, ending the call. After that, I heard from her less and less. Jason mentioned she had finally started looking for a job, though her progress was slow. She was beginning to learn the hard way that life doesn't cater to those who take it for granted. As for me, I kept my focus on the future. I wasn't bitter or angry anymore, I was free. Sophia's isolation was the natural consequence of her choices, and while I didn't wish her harm, I wasn't about to let her pull me back into her chaos. Life without Sophia was quieter, simpler, and full of opportunities one hadn't realized I was missing. For the first time in years, I felt a deep sense of peace. Months had passed since Sophia walked out of my life, leaving the wreckage of our marriage behind. In that time, I had rebuilt something stronger, something more meaningful, not just for myself, but for Chloe and Caleb too. It hadn't been easy, but every step had been worth it. Sophia's apology lingered in my thoughts. The uncharacteristic softness in her voice had struck a chord. For years, she had been the center of our relationship, soaking up all the attention, while I quietly stood in the background. Hearing her admit fault was unexpected, but it couldn't undo the damage that had been done. One afternoon, as I worked in my home office, my phone buzzed. It was Sophia. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Caleb," she began, her voice hesitant. "I wanted to ask if we could meet, just to talk in person," Sophia said. Her voice was careful, almost hesitant, as if she knew I was already guarding myself against her. "What is it you need, Sophia?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. "I need to apologize properly. Please." There was a long pause as I weighed my options. Finally, I gave in. "All right. Tomorrow, the cafe near the park. Noon." The next day, I arrived early, a knot of curiosity and apprehension tightening in my chest. Sophia walked in a few minutes later, and for a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She looked different, tired, humbled, like someone who had weathered a storm and was still trying to find their footing. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, sitting down across from me. I gave a slight nod, waiting for her to speak. "I've had a lot of time to think," she began, her hands clasped tightly on the table. "About us, about what I did to you and to our family. And I realize now how selfish I was. I took you for granted, Caleb. You gave me everything, and I repaid you by making you feel like you didn't matter." Her words were unpolished, raw, and completely unexpected. "I don't know if you'll ever forgive me," she continued, her voice trembling. "But I needed to say this. I'm sorry. For the lies, the manipulation, and for making you feel like you were less than you are. You didn't deserve that." I studied her carefully, searching for any hint of insincerity, but all I saw was a woman broken by her own decisions, now trying to rebuild herself. "I appreciate the apology," I said at last, my voice measured. "But Sophia, forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. Too much has happened. I can't trust you the way I used to." She nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I understand. I don't expect us to go back. I needed to make things right, even if it's only with words." We sat in silence for a while, the unspoken weight of everything that had transpired hanging in the air. "How are the kids?" she asked softly. "They're doing well," I replied. "They miss you, but they're adjusting. I've done my best to keep things steady for them." She smiled weakly, her expression tinged with regret. You're a good father, Caleb. Better than I ever gave you credit for. Her words struck harder than I expected. For years, I'd been the quiet, steady anchor for our family, making sacrifices that often went unnoticed. Hearing her acknowledge that now was both validating and bittersweet. I'll always be there for them, I said firmly. And I hope you'll do the same. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. I will. I'm trying to rebuild my life, to be someone they can be proud of again. We parted ways that day on a lighter note, not reconciled but with a sense of closure. It felt like the wounds we'd inflicted on each other were finally beginning to heal. In the weeks that followed, I saw glimpses of Sophia's effort to change. She reached out to the kids more often, showed up at their school events, and made genuine attempts to reconnect. I gave her that space, knowing how important it was for Chloe and Caleb to have both parents in their lives. As for me, I continued to move forward, embracing the new chapter of my life. I had started seeing someone, Lauren, a kind, genuine woman who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. Our relationship was still in its early days, but it already felt different. It felt real. One evening, Lauren and I sat together on the porch, watching the sun sink below the horizon. As the sky shifted into shades of gold and amber, I found myself reflecting on how far I had come. The betrayal that had once consumed me now felt like a distant echo. Sophia's apology had reminded me that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal. But it also solidified my determination to never settle for less than I deserved. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the living room window, casting a soft, golden glow across the space. It was a new day, another step forward in this life I was rebuilding. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee as Chloe and Caleb chatted about their weekend plans. Their laughter echoed through the house, a sweet reminder of what truly mattered. It hadn't been an easy journey to get here. The path from betrayal to this moment had been steeped in anger, heartbreak, and self-doubt. But now, as I watched my children and the life we were creating together, I felt a peace I hadn't experienced in years. Dad, can we go to the park later? Caleb asked, his eyes lighting up with excitement. Of course, I said with a smile. How about we pack a picnic and make a day of it? Chloe grinned. Can Lauren come too? Her question caught me off guard for a moment, but I quickly recovered. Lauren had become a steady presence in our lives. She'd met Chloe and Caleb a few weeks earlier, and to my relief, they adored her. I'll ask her, I replied, keeping my tone casual. But let's plan it either way. Lauren had been an unexpected gift. After years of feeling invisible in my marriage, she saw me, truly saw me, not just as a father or a provider but as a man deserving of love and respect. Her presence in my life wasn't overwhelming or demanding. It was quiet, steady, and filled with a kind of joy I hadn't known in years. That afternoon, we met at the park. Lauren arrived with a basket of snacks, her warm smile brightening the day. Chloe and Caleb raced ahead to the playground while we set up a blanket under a shady tree. You're spoiling them, I teased as she unpacked sandwiches, cookies, and fresh fruit. They deserve it, she said with a light shrug. And so do you. Her words stopped me in my tracks. For so long, I'd been conditioned to believe my worth was tied to what I could provide. Lauren reminded me that I was enough, just as I was. As the afternoon wore on, I watched my kids play, their laughter blending with the sounds of the park. Lauren sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on mine. In that moment, I realized something profound. I was happy, truly and deeply happy. Meanwhile, Sophia was navigating her own path. She had finally landed a job at a local boutique. It was a far cry from the glamorous high society events she once dominated, but the work seemed to be teaching her the value of effort and responsibility. She had also started rebuilding her relationship with Chloe and Caleb. She called regularly, asked about their lives, and even showed up for a few school events. The bitterness that had once defined our interactions was slowly dissolving, giving way to a fragile but promising truce. One evening, after a school play, Sophia approached me in the parking lot. Caleb, she said, her voice uncertain. Thank you for letting me be part of their lives. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral but not unkind. It's not about what you deserve, Sophia. It's about what they deserve. And they deserve to have both parents in their corner. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she didn't say anything more. We parted ways in silence, the unspoken understanding between us a testament to how far we had come. As the months rolled on, my life continued to take shape in ways I hadn't imagined. Lauren and I grew closer, our relationship rooted in trust and mutual respect. She encouraged me to rediscover hobbies I'd abandoned long ago: photography, hiking, even cooking. One evening, as we stood in the kitchen preparing dinner together, she glanced at me with a thoughtful look. "Caleb," she said softly, "have you ever thought about what's next? Not just for us, but for you." I paused, reflecting on her question. "I think I'm already living it," I replied honestly. "For the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." She smiled, her eyes full of warmth. "I'm glad. You deserve this." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Life wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was real. And it was mine. Sophia's chapter in my life had closed, but the lessons it left behind would stay with me forever: the importance of self-respect, the strength found in forgiveness, and the unmatched value of authenticity. One evening, as I stood on the porch watching Chloe and Caleb play in the yard, Lauren beside me, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The road that had brought me here had been long and painful, but it had led me to a place of peace, love, and hope. This wasn't just a new chapter. This was my new beginning.